Now, to give us more perspective, we are being joined by Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya from Dhaka. He is a distinguished fellow at the Center for Policy Dialogue. Welcome to the broadcast, Dr. Bhattacharya.
Good evening.
Do you think the Bangladesh Nationalist Party's boycott does more harm than good to the people of Bangladesh?
I think the day had been eventful, but thankfully less violence that many of us were apprehending. So from that point of view, that there is some comfort. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, this event which we had today, the special electoral exercise, did not really solve the fundamental problem which is afflicting the country. We need a political settlement in order to get going, particularly to undertake the reforms and stabilize the economy, and also to reach out to the left behind people in this development process. So what it has added today is that if you look at that, one of the most contested issue will be what is the voting rate, voter turnout rate, because the government has put the voter turnouts as their justification for the endorsement of this particular activity. But as you have just mentioned yourself, that at 3 o'clock it was 27.5% or something like that, but by within an hour it jumped to 40%. I think this will one issue which will create a lot of controversy. On the other hand, if you see the issue of apart from voters turnout, the issue of vote rigging or withdrawal of candidates, frustrated candidates in the middle of the election, or for that matter, there have been at least two centers in Rangamati, the Chittagong Hill Tract, the troubled area, where not a single vote was cast in that sense. So I think the issue has not been resolved, which is afflicting the country. The country is facing that electoral, the dilemma. And more importantly, now we are going to have another group of people contesting this whole electoral activity. There will be the defeated candidates, both from the ruling party and their allies.
Right. You mentioned that at 3 p.m. it was about 27% the voter turnout, and then at 4 o'clock it was about 40%. So there was a massive jump within 1 hour, and that might create some controversy. How are you reading that?
I think if you go back into the history, there had been a 40% number making round even before the election. That was one of the target numbers which were talked about by the Election Commission and others. The pro-election, the ruling party is always considered 40% to be a reasonable turnout number under the circumstances. Although it is less than half of what had been in 2008,
yes,
the last good election we had under a caretaker system, and even in 2008, 18, it was more than 80%. You mentioned it in your news. So you see, it is much less than what can give comfort in terms of the legitimacy debate.
All right. Dr. Bhattacharya, Bangladesh's economy is struggling at the moment. The world is aware about it. But there is also no doubt that Sheikh Hasina has been credited with turning around the economy and its massive garment industry. Then on the other hand, she has also been accused of moving the country towards autocracy. So there is a visible development versus democracy debate. How do you see it?
There is no doubt that we have made great progress in the last decade or so. We have come out, we have attained the status of low middle income country in 2015. We plan to get out of the least developed country group in 2026, and we do have great aspiration for 2041 to become a high middle income country, if not a high income country. So I think that is very much out there, and there is material basis to think that these are not just creating castles in the air. The challenge which is there is that in the process, we have destabilized our economy, creating serious strains in the macroeconomic stability. It's a great misfortune for the Prime Minister to go to an election with possibly with the weakest economic year or fiscal year at this moment in that way. So there is high inflation. But more importantly, that we are not being able to pay our foreign dues, particularly the outstanding import bills and also the upcoming debt servicing liability for foreign debts. And the taka is weakening, which is again feeding into the inflation. So if you relate it to the elections, I think what is important is that we'll have to see whether the election has generated enough political momentum
All right.
for the government to undertake hard reforms in the coming days, or whether the old influential entrenched power groups will again thwart the
Absolutely.
possibilities in this regard. We have commitments to the IMF in this
Right.
regard and hope that the government will be able to do something about it.
Absolutely. That's the hope, Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I'm sorry I have to cut it short, but thank you so much for all your insights and joining us from Dhaka.
Thank you.